Yeah, okay. Sweet. We're live. We can get this show started. I don't have a plan today. I kind of just want to put my head down and start typing some C++ and see where it takes me. More specifically, I just kind of want to tinker around with how I want to lay out the operations of my game when I want to handle inputs, when I want to convert those inputs into actions, when I want to use those actions to command game state update, when I want to actually process game state update, and just kind of go down the tree. And if I have time, I also want to play around more with data serialization. Currently with Briarthorn, I'm using Toml, so maybe continue using that. You've been playing Stardew Valley for 6 hours today? That's like the entire day. I've been working the entire day. I've been writing C++ all day. I'm exhausted. And I'm going to try and write some more C++ tonight. Maybe. It's not going to look good though. It's going to be raw C++. No coherent thoughts, no structure, no memory safety. A little bit of memory safety. Just some C++. I want to try some libraries out. Ugh, I'm gonna fall asleep before the stream's over. I played Stardew Valley. Actually, I don't know how many hours. I've never beaten Stardew Valley, assuming that game can be beaten. I've never made it off the first map. Never like got on the bus to go to like the desert area, for instance. So I never got that far. For me, it gets a little repetitive. How do I maintain the will to always write C++? I don't know. It takes patience, and it takes managing your time well. I can obviously writing C++ during the job, you have to, right? That's how I do it, because if I don't do it, I don't get paid. But in my free time, I'm not always writing C++. I'm actually writing it more now than ever because I'm streaming it. But prior to that, I would go months just not writing anything. Get off work and go do my own thing. It's good to give your brain a break, right? You don't always have to be writing code. That's why I try to have some game nights throughout the week, because it becomes too much. I'm already writing code like 40 hours a week, plus the code I'm writing on stream. So like, plus all the thinking I'm doing outside of stream to figure out what I'm going to write next. Sometimes you need to give yourself a break. I like to take breaks. It's something I have learned over the years. When I was younger and learning, I was spending so much time writing code, even after work. And you do that and you'll burn yourself out. So you're trying to you want to pace yourself, right? So that's kind of what I'm doing. So tonight, I don't have a real goal to write towards something that I want to complete. This is more exploration, getting my thoughts in order. So I'm gonna tinker with some ideas because I don't know what I'm doing sometimes, it turns out. And the best way that I learn to eventually know what I'm doing is to try and sketch out some ideas, play around with them, Google a lot, look at other libraries and see how they are doing things. It's how I've built up my experience over the years, is just doing that. Yo, how's it going, Gar? Dark, that's amazing. I'll be honest, Dark. I've been looking on Twitch for these points you're talking about, and I still have not found them. I am such a bad Twitch streamer because I have no idea how to look this stuff up. I know it exists. Is it viewer rewards? What is this? What's viewer rewards? Power-ups and channel points. Oh, wait, is this it? Enable channel points, customize point display, Manage power-ups. I don't know what any of this means. Well, Dark, I think I just found the emotes you were talking about. And I'm going to have to read up on this because I don't know what any of this means. I'm such a, what do the kids call it? I'm such a boomer right now when it comes to like Twitch and what you can and can't do with it. I got a lot of learning to do. You know more than me at this point. Dude, Gar, if I had $5 million to just give someone, I'm not sure I would be able to stream today because I would not know C++. Because if I had $5 million, I probably would not be working 40 hours a week doing C++. I'd probably be working on something else entirely. I don't know. Actually, I don't know what I would do if I wasn't doing C++. I have to assume I would be using some language. It might still be C++, I don't know. But I have to assume I'd be using something. Look, guys, here's the deal. We all pitch in $1 and we try and win the lottery. Now, I think the odds are like 1 in hundreds of millions, but if we win, we can split it out and we will all maybe earn an additional 50 cents for that dollar. All right. I think it's time to tinker. So everyone should be aware of my game called Briarthorn. Ooh, I am streaming live to my website. That's still working. That's kind of cool. So I really just kind of want to tinker. I'm just gonna start typing, and if you guys have questions or are curious about anything, feel free. But otherwise, I'm just gonna go. And where I'm going, I have no idea. Oh my god. I'm trying to remember if I have this set up to show the application when it runs. Sweet, it does. Did we get this working with a controller? We did. Oh, wait, did we not fix the range rings? Oh, we did fix the range rings. That's on a different branch. I never got it merged. Good old tinkering, that's what I'm doing. And I really kind of want to think about what a finished game looks like for a game loop, and how I go about like modifying and interacting with the UI and the state and everything without using like Awin's node hierarchy. I kind of want to look at this from the perspective of like data-oriented development, having like simple data structs, game state, things that are easy to follow, that kind of thing. And I kind of talked about this before when I was playing around with this idea. I've never written code like this before. I've always used like polymorphism. I've always used object-oriented programming. And so I like to just think about solving problems differently to see if it's easier, more difficult. And I'm trying to figure out how I want to start sketching this out because I don't know if I want to mess with this while loop. So I kind of want to just do, I guess I could, right? I could just do it like here, for instance. Hey, Thomas, how's it going? So, like, what's the first thing we do in a game? Is it inputs? Do we collect inputs? Good night, Dark. I really appreciate it. Thanks for the bit. So collect inputs would be like collect raw inputs, right? So that would be raylib, gathering keyboard events, mouse events, joystick events, touch events. Ooh, initialize assets. Okay, so that's fair. Um, I'm inside the loop, but you are right. So that's almost like I am doing that somewhere. So up here, we load. So to keep everything like within scope of what we're looking at, we would initialize assets slash configuration. So this could be things like style. So maybe the option or the ability to change the color scheme of your game, because during development, how it looks is going to change over the course of game dev, and it becomes a lot easier to tweak those settings if you make them visible through file configuration versus hard-coded data and having to recompile over and over. So I think initialize assets would be a good step. This is almost like a step 0. And then inside the one, or inside the, whoops, inside the loop here, you would collect user inputs. But the problem is, when you're playing a game, you don't want to just be like, "Hey, is the A button pressed?" Is that the A button? Yeah. If the A button is pressed, or if the B button is pressed, the Y or the X, right? Because a user has the ability to modify key bindings. Or I guess if you want your game to be accessible, it's probably worthwhile having the option to allow a user to change the key bindings. So once that is loaded, I'm trying to think. It's not just dang, my controller is dirty. No one look at my controller. I play a lot of Rocket League, okay, and sometimes it gets intense, and sometimes your controller gets dirty. Um, so this assets and configurations kind of doing a lot of heavy lifting, right? Because there's also so it's almost like a 0.b and a 0.a, because you also want to load like settings, right? Because a user changing the mappings of a controller, for instance, graphic settings, resolution, so on and so forth, we're going to need to handle settings. My auto formatting keeps, I need it to not, is there a way I can turn that off? I think there is. It's like clang format. Actually, let's do it at the top. So I don't want to mess with this right now. So let's do clang format off. Heck yeah, that worked. Okay. And then I think once you're in the game and you're doing menu selection stuff, you're going to load a file, that kind of thing. That's going to happen inside the loop, which means you need user input to interact with the game. Oh my gosh, why is this happening? It's been a long day. So, keyboard inputs, mouse inputs, touch inputs, joystick inputs, all that fun stuff. I think we need to translate inputs into actions. What is an action? Well, if you're familiar with like game frameworks like Godot or Unity, Unreal, I'm sure as well, they allow you to specify almost like a string that says like, hey, this represents a jump, or this represents an attack, and this is what it maps to. It maps to a keyboard, it maps to a joystick button, a mouse button, so on and so forth. So I think we need to be able to take these raw inputs, pass it into a function that returns game actions. So the game won't ever really be aware that a mouse exists. The game won't be aware that a keyboard exists. The game will only be aware that actions exist. So then, I think, what do? We pass in the actions to update game state with actions. And that could be anything at this point. Well, the game has already started. So we want to initialize assets. We want to load a save file. Did my music stop? Huh. Weird. Hmm. Okay. Collect inputs, translate inputs into actions. So we're gonna need a. Oh, okay, my computer's doing something weird. I'm losing access to my mouse controls. Is that moving better? There we go. Weird. Okay, we're good. We collect inputs, we translate inputs into actions, which might impact your menu. We're going to have we're gonna have menu screens. The user, like, say you're on the main menu. So I don't think we're doing like game logic update yet. We're like, we haven't entered the game. UI gets rendered towards the end, I think. Which happens after rendering the game. So if we haven't entered the game yet, then there's really nothing to render for the game yet. So we'll need to control state. We'll need state that says like, hey, you're in the game menu, or like you're in the menu, you're in the game, you're in pause, etc. Ooh, you're right. You're gonna need to initialize all the audio, which honestly, initialize assets, configuration. Let's do like you load assets so that you can then play the assets. You load settings. Now, with audio, I'm assuming. I mean, I would end up using like Raylib for audio, so I'm assuming that will get played and managed by Raylib. I don't know if Raylib under the hood like runs it on a different thread. I'm not 100% sure how like audio playback works, but I would assume that a dedicated thread is needed for audio to process and then make it to the speakers essentially, so that the rest of your game can keep doing its own thing. We load assets, we load configuration, we load settings. This would be like resolution, I mean, I don't think my game is going to have different levels of detail for graphics. It's going to be, I think it'll be simple enough. Keybinds, etc. And settings, this is going to be like, I'm almost going to have to, after you, like, before you close the window, sure, unload assets, basically do the reverse, right? So anything you're loading here, well, you're not modifying assets. The only thing you're really modifying is settings. So, like, after you leave the game, you're going to have to save settings. That way, the next time you open the game, it will remember what the settings are. This is usually the stuff you find in, like, my documents or my game, your like games folder from Steam, that kind of thing. I think that's what would go here. Well, I guess your save state would too, which is where serialization will come into play later. So with a simplified system here, usually I'm used to having like a bunch of callbacks for handling like signals and slots, and we kind of see that with Awin, where I set up the signals for like on draw, on update, on event. But for more of a data oriented layout, I think what's going to happen, translate input into actions. We're going to need to start collecting events and processing events. Do we process these actions immediately, or do we pass the actions into game logic? I think we process the actions and turn them into commands. And commands is what effectively modifies the game state. Because actions don't have to affect a game state. An action could be like, if I'm going to pause the game, why do I use trailing return? Just because I feel like it. No other reason. Well, I mean, that's not true. There is a benefit to trailing return types. You won't see it a lot, but I do know one of the benefits with it is it helps with type resolution of like enum types, for instance. Because usually, if you're returning an enum, you have to prefix that enum with the class scope that enum belongs to. But with trailing return types, going left to right, the compiler is able to read that an enum belongs to this class when it's declared that way. So there is a little bit of a benefit there. I'm almost certain there's some other benefits that I'm not aware of because I just haven't dug deep into it. But I will say the main reason I am doing it, one, to try it out. Two, I use a tool called Clang Tidy, which helps make sure that I am adhering to best coding practices. And one of the flags that is turned on is modernize. So this modernize flag is making sure that my C++ code is written in a more modern manner versus just like letting me write C++ however I want, right? So that's why. You don't have to do that. And I don't call anyone out for doing that. I mean, professionally, I don't do it because everyone is so used to the return type being on the left. But like, if you ever pay attention to more modern languages, almost everyone these days is using trailing return types and trailing type declaration. So even when you see like the use of auto in C++, like most other languages are effectively doing this now anyway, but you're allowed to specify a trailing type to the variable. So it's just a more modern way of writing language, and it helps me get used to it. And then I'm more used to it when I look at other coding languages. But I wouldn't hold anyone against it if it's not for them. But yeah, so we would receive during this collect inputs call, we would see that this start button is being pressed. And then when we would translate it to an action, we would see a pause action occurred. So then what do you do with that pause action? Well, if you go to update game state, nothing really happens. It's almost like you don't run the game state because you're paused. Now, if you're doing like a real time or multiplayer game where pause isn't a thing, and you're just pulling up the menu, well, then maybe that's all it is. Maybe this brings up the menu. And then what tells it to bring up the menu? Well, there's some flag, there's something that changes the state of your application that says, hey, stop running the game and bring up a menu. Translate inputs into actions. So is this like, this isn't process actions, is it? So we consume the actions and turn them into stuff. That stuff could be game state, it could be commands. Um, I think I want to keep actions out of game state processing. So if we had like a an update game state function here, I don't think I want actions to come in here. Hmm. I'm trying to think, even with this could be like a turn action, which basically is a command to steer, which is kind of how I was doing it in Godot. I feel like my cat's been sleeping all day, so I don't know what he has to be tired about right now. We turn, that produces a command. So process, so is it process actions, translate actions, actions into commands? The launch command, the fire command, the toggle between entities command. So this would determine what entities are selected. Commands are effectively the API of the game. It's everything that you could do to drive the game. Move a character, attack, jump. Do I need to distinguish that between actions? I feel like I do, because I think actions map directly to input, and not all commands will come from a controlled input. Because AI, so if I have like an enemy who is flying around shooting at me, then the AI system is producing commands. It's not producing actions. So actions is just a translation layer for user input. Commands is API calls into the game. So anything the game can do can be done through commands. So then the question becomes, are commands just state with logic elsewhere, or do the commands contain the logic? So I'm thinking like collect inputs, returns, keyboard, mouse, gamepad, etc. Translate inputs into actions would return steer, throttle, brake, target, etc. Now, some of those would map directly to a command. Translate actions into command. Steer left, throttle, brake, target, zoom in. Range in, range out, apply throttle, etc. So maybe this does modify state. Yeah, this modifies state. So commands modify state. So this would be like process commands. You pass in the game state as well as the commands that modify the game state. Or maybe this would be a good use for polymorphism still. Or I could just do a like for const auto command commands. Well, I mean, it doesn't have to be polymorphism. I could use variants. I can hard code all the commands in my game just fine. I'm not trying to make this generic. So this would execute the command. So if that's the case, I really don't need to do it this way. I can do So we translate our controls into actions, actions into commands. Commands update game state. Then we run the game logic. We simulate a frame of game, if you will. The dude is snoring. We update game state with actions. That's not true. Update game state with... Nope. Update game state. So this is just general game loop. So whatever the state of the game is, it's going to have things that have the game do something. That could be as simple as the entity has acceleration, so we need to update its velocity and therefore its position in the world. That requires no like user input. So we update the game state. Now, the other thing I'm thinking about is going to be like behavior trees, which I may or may not even need. But like basically AI. Something needs to command like a missile, for instance, to target and continue to steer towards it, to steer towards an enemy. So that's where I'm going to need like a number of systems. So maybe in this update game state, it's going to be like update movement, collision, update AI. Yeah. That's kind of going to be like the maneuvers. Update maneuvers. And the maneuvers will produce steering state for movement. So I guess none of that needs to be a command. I'm not really going to have collision, but it is going to be like update weapon. Weapon fuse. Update weapon detonation. Update weapon damage. So, um, hmm. Trying to decide if updating game state produces any output to be processed on like the next frame. Because if weapon detonation occurs, I think we are going to need events because we'll eventually want to feed into the rendering like when to trigger animation, like a detonation, particles slowly expanding, right? We're going to need an event that tells us this is happening so that every iteration we don't need to keep checking if a detonation occurred. It occurred, so now for the next half a second to a second, animate. So that does mean events, update game state, events, and it produces events like detonation. Um, I wonder. Because we will get to a point where an enemy detects you. And that detection will basically have the enemy's AI determine like how it's going to maneuver and fire at you. When it fires at you, it's going to create a new entity. That's a command. So I think that's what's going to have to okay, so yeah, it's going to be a command if it needs to modify game state. So creating a new entity, launching a new missile, doing damage, applying damage to a player. An event is something observable. Event versus command. Distinction is still a bit fuzzy. Some commands may be one-off, while others may be continuous until released. Some events may be triggered by commands, while others may be triggered by game changes. This is an area that may need further refinement as development progresses. Event versus command. Events are observable occurrences. Let's see what AI is saying here. Events are observable occurrences that happen in the game world, while commands are instructions issued by the player or AI to perform specific actions. Events can trigger commands. And commands can lead to new events. For example, a player pressed fire button event might trigger. Okay, so I'm mixing like 3 different patterns here: actions, events, and commands. What in the AI slop? Are you talking about the auto-completed comment that hasn't been applied yet? Events versus command. Events are observable changes that occurred, while commands modify game state. So events do not modify state. So I do want to make sure that happens. You can listen to an event that something happened, but you don't use it. Like running a command or running an event doesn't change game state. Running a command will change game state. So yeah, I think that's what's going to happen. I think update game state might return both events and commands. Because performing like an AI action or maneuver, updating the AI would mean like, hey, an enemy is trying to target someone, is trying to find someone. It sees them over here, and so they are commanded to steer towards them. How do I do this? So you have a guy like flying, they're flying, and he like sees over there. So we produce a command that says, hey, modify his state. So this here would produce commands. So then the question becomes, do I only process commands at one point in the loop? I feel like the answer is yes. That way it's just simpler to keep track of everything and debug versus letting commands run inline directly where they happen. Because then it becomes really easy to be like, hey, there's something really weird with my AI logic, and then just like literally just print the entire list of commands to a file or output and be like, oh, hey, there's a problem. Versus trying to like navigate through all of these update functions and figure out what's happening. But I fear we run into a situation where you would command someone to do something and you expect it to happen on that same frame. I mean, it's really just is it just going to be like AI that's producing these commands? If so, that makes sense because effectively update AI and process commands are happening at the same time. Yeah. And then events will effectively become observable state change that my UI or things I'm rendering can also observe. So that would be like, because I'm not doing callbacks. So think of a health bar. Health bar might be a bad example because health bar I could just literally render every tick. No, a good example is animation. So if I want to kick off an animated explosion, particles that start here, and then a couple seconds later, or maybe half a second later, is here, followed by here, and then they disappear, right? I don't need to update a bunch of state to make that happen. And I don't need to see that a detonation state is existing every tick. I just need to know the one time a detonation occurred, and then I run the animation. So events are to observe what occurred to trigger, really to trigger UI. I don't, or to trigger visuals. I don't know if I need events. I might need events for game state. But even so, that would get handled on the next tick. So yeah, for now, obviously we could change this. I haven't started writing code for this, so we can honestly do whatever we want. But I think during the update step is its output could be events or commands. Detonation, damage, collision, yeah. So then, once your game has ticked, what's next? Rendering the game world, right? Rendering what entities exist, rendering what, I don't know, what they look like. Animations based on events. So you could, what's another animation you could actually do here? So if you, for example, I'm not doing this for this game, but if you had like a sprite who is walking, right? You could make it to where you go from one sprite, the step sprite to the stand to the other step, and but you want to do that within a certain amount of time. You would want to animate that based on whatever your current like state is. So that could be an event for walking that triggers the animation. So yeah, so render draw game would be like state events. Now I don't think drawing the game consumes commands, because commands are just there to generate game state. So we would draw state and any events that we want to observe. And then the UI would be the same thing, I think. Now UI is also going to have like what I'm going to call style. I do want to have a configurable style to this game. I want the user to, I want the user to be able to configure their HUD layout. So if we look, this is very simplified, but I like the idea of like as part of the game, the user kind of gets to build what their HUD looks like to beat the game, optimize the layout for them. So having style define all of that would go a long way. And this is technically like UI state, whereas this would be game state. So I have to, we have to update UI state. Update UI state. So UI state is only the pieces needed to render the UI. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Because you would have, for example, an inventory. What the heck? Weird. My copy and paste isn't doing what I expected to. So this would be the UI, right? If I had like a simple inventory system. Hey, Sarah. I'm not really writing any code right now, but I am doing C++. I am sketching out some thoughts on how I might want to organize my game, how I want to handle inputs, updating the game state, updating the UI state, when to render, when to handle events, when to handle animations, while also not using a game engine but writing it from scratch. I have a lot of C++ experience, but I don't have a lot of experience writing code specifically this way, which is more data oriented, simple data structs. And honestly, this is more like C with classes. Whereas I'm used to doing things more like object oriented. And I do develop a game engine on the side every now and then on these streams that is more object oriented. This one, I'm just kind of tinkering. I'm just thinking about things. I might not do any of this. This is just helping me organize my thoughts. I find sometimes it's good to take a break with what you're trying to solve and just sketch out some ideas. See if those ideas make sense or see if you are crazy. Most of the time, you find out you're crazy. So, this would be the UI state, which is effectively going to be like an inventory with item slots. Whereas your game state, so your game state is like, hey, you have 4 missiles on your aircraft. The UI state is saying, hey, you have a panel made up of 4 rectangles. And in those rectangles, you have some kind of asset you've loaded, texture, sprite, geometry, what have you, that you are rendering in these slots. Or maybe you're in the middle of dragging and dropping, right? So maybe you're doing something like you have an item. Are you not able to drag this? Well, pretend we're dragging and dropping, right? So you have an item, and you're in the middle of dragging it. So it's right here. So something has to know the position of this item. Something has to know what this item looks like. That's UI state. So I have to think about that too, is how do we handle the fact that a user is in the middle of dragging? Is that also a command, but is that a command for UI state? Is that an event? Is this something Raylib automatically or RayGUI automatically handles for us? But something, it's probably UI state that says like, hey, you have a almost like its own entity, but you have an entity here with a position on the screen, and we need to render its position. We also need to render what it looks like. So this could be like draw texture. And then while we are in the middle of dragging, which is, me holding the finger down on the mouse button. So while dragging, or if dragging is true, right? Every tick, if dragging is true, and then if dragging is false, so drag and drop. So if drag enter, right? So you enter and then you release. So I let go, and then you have logic that checks like, hey, is it within the bounds, so on and so forth. All of this would be UI state for the inventory system because it's not touching your game. Your game doesn't interact with this until you decide to drop this into another inventory slot, and now it produces a command to move an item from one inventory slot into another. And what do commands do? They modify your game. So I think then what that means is update UI state also produces commands, right? Because if my UI state lets go of something being dragged, then that's a command to move the inventory of a player, right? So now we have like update AI. Maybe we have update player. And inside update player, man, this thing's going to have layers. Update inventory. Which, I mean, some of these commands, I gotta think about this. Because even the commands, it's going to be like, hey, apply steering, apply throttle, apply brake, apply target. Because remember, commands is all of the API available to control your game. Because theoretically, you could wire up all of the commands to to another service that you write, and then boom, you have a tool to automatically play your game and maybe find bugs with it by just feeding all these commands into your game loop. And now I don't have to like go in and modify a bunch of state in these functions hard code style. I can just pass in a debug command, and all of that can be done without having to touch any of this. Also, this makes it a lot more testable too, I think. So then that also means like apply inventory change or something like that, right? So this is where all the commands get updated. Now, what I don't know is if with commands would be a good excuse to use polymorphism. Because commands could be like their own encapsulated self-contained state almost like events with an execute. So I'll think about that one. That might just make it a little cleaner to code. And I don't have to like keep ownership or anything. So this would effectively just be a vector of unique pointers if that's the route I go. Otherwise, I would use a standard variant and just keep it pure data. We shall see. We shall see. So process commands, that's where all of this gets handled. Processing commands changes the state of the game so that when you go to actually update the game can interact or react to those state changes. So update UI state, that would be like dragging, dropping, clicking on buttons, anything that causes UI to occur. So let's walk through like what would it look like if a user hit the start button to open a menu? Well, first we determine if the start button was pressed. Then we determine if this button is actually mapped to opening the menu. So do we get a menu action, for instance? If we get a menu action, did we say if this produced commands? No, it produced actions. Okay, so if we get a menu action, does that produce a command to modify game state? It does not. So how do we tell UI state to change with this action? Because when a action occurs for opening a menu, we kind of want to, this is almost above the game. We go from like, hey, game is in the menu, or game is at the start menu, game is loaded and running. Game is now paused, or maybe if you're not going to support pausing, then the game is in the middle of like a game menu. I feel like this is almost UI state still. So the user hits pause, no commands to operate on, one tick might run, right? So that's something else to keep in mind. These inputs are getting pulled every frame, whereas the game logic is only updating at like 100 hertz or 60 hertz. So we could hit pause, but this could be the frame no game logic is processed. So that makes sense. So that means, I wonder if process commands need to get processed at the same tick interval. I almost wonder. This could be a command. And the game state that's being modified is effectively the run state, whether the game is running or not. Is the game running? Is it paused? Is it so on and so forth? And if it is, then this update UI update, why is this not highlighting? This update UI state would see that the game is paused. And if the game is paused, then the UI state would enable or flick on the pause menu, right? So let's say this is my inventory screen here, and we enter the pause menu, right? The menu that like overlaps the entire game screen. Well, during this update UI state, we read from the game state that the game is paused. So then we essentially flip a flag, a visible flag, on the pause menu that says, "Hey, it's time to show the menu." And then here we can be like, "Hey, while the game is paused, don't process any of this." Or do. It just, again, it depends on the type of game we're trying to run here. Because we might still, if we want to keep running, then yeah, we want to keep running. But if we want to pause completely and don't modify any game state while we're in the menu, well then yeah, while it's paused, don't run any updates. Do we run into a situation where I command my aircraft to turn, so we update the steering so that the next time movement occurs, it will steer, it will turn. But during this process, we see that pause was called. So this guy's been updated to steer, but it hasn't ran yet because it's not its time to run. Translate actions into commands. Oh, this is a different thing. Translate action into commands. I'm trying to decide if commands need to be processed every tick. I guess it could be. I don't know. Yeah. I think commands might get processed every tick. So then that would modify the game state to be paused. Here we check if it is paused, then none of this gets ran. And then we move down here. And here we see that game state is paused, so we set the flag to show the menu. And then we eventually hit a button that says close menu, which would produce a command. To unpause? We produce a command to unpause. So then on the next frame here, or the beginning of the next frame, state is no longer paused. We update some game state, and then the UI hides the menu. So that could be a problem. So the game starts running before the user can see that it's running. But we're talking like one frame. That's probably okay. If we're running at like, and this is a simple game, right? So most systems will run this at 60 hertz, no problem, if not hundreds of hertz. So will a user be upset if the game updates in 16 milliseconds before the menu closes? Well, no, it won't matter. It won't matter because this is all happening on the same frame, right? So we're going to draw the state of the game and then hide the UI. So you will see the updated game state. So we're good. We're so good. Oh my God. It's just like it's all coming together. I can see the matrix. This is awesome. So another thing a command would be is like saving a game. Maybe in draw UI, the user, you know, navigates their save files, and then they select an option to save, and then they hit save. That produces a save command which contains like, I don't know, the file path or something like that. And then during process commands, honestly, what we could do with save is literally, since everything is a data struct, we could copy it. We could literally copy the entire world. And we could do it. We could copy it and then serialize it asynchronously. Because once it's copied, we're no longer reading the state that is being modified. It's its own self-contained state. So we can do all of that asynchronously. So copying would be super easy using nothing but data. What am I missing? Audio? How do we do audio? Is audio ran? Audio's probably ran via commands as well, right? Like your or events, I guess. Is audio would be events. So you walked. So you play an audio sound for walking. Where does that occur? Update UI state. Because you usually hear audio when you're like, for example, navigating a menu as well. So if I am navigating a menu via these UI states, play audio, would it be audio state? So audio state contains all of the loaded audio that could be played for your game. And then based on an event, the audio would play. Or is it also a command? I don't think it's a command. You're not well, I actually don't know because I've never had to use like audio for software development. When should audio be played in a game loop? Sometimes you just gotta Google. Play audio during the action or state change. To ensure your game loop handles audio cleanly and efficiently, one-shot flags, which is going to be my events. Use a Boolean toggle or cooldown timer in your game loop to a sound. So I think the answer is to treat audio kind of like animation, right? You're going to trigger something to just play. And audio, I have to assume, will be on its own thread. So you just, anytime an event occurs, trigger any events you care about to play sound. Avoid frame stacking. If your loop detects an ongoing event, like walking on grass, use timers so the footstep sound plays only once every X seconds rather than on every frame. That makes sense. You don't necessarily want to keep like re-triggering the same audio sound every time the event stays present. It's like I said, like animation. You want to kind of play through the animation, and then if the animation is still playing and you're still getting the event, then I think you just drop the event. Or do you add on to the timer? Ooh, we'll have to play with that one. I'm not worried about spatial audio. Yeah, I think events is where it's at. I use events to kind of trigger something to happen. So audio, I don't. I mean, I assume yeah, there's gonna have to be audio state because I need to know what to play. So there will be audio state. Now it might be static. It might not be something that gets modified. So I might put that in like the static, the asset database, if you will. Okay, I'm kind of liking this. I'm glad I sketched this out. It all sounds good in theory until you start implementing it, and then it all falls apart. The thing I want to decide is if commands are actually going to be plain data or if I use polymorphism for that. I think it'd be okay if I use polymorphism because commands I'm not going to save state with. And so it would just make code a little easier. Might still try variance. Events. Events aren't performing any logic, so I don't think I would need polymorphism for events. They're just going to be state that I observe, so that would definitely be variance. All right, cool. So I'm still going to be coding for like an hour and a half, hour and a half. So I think I'm going to go run to the bathroom, top off my water, and maybe start playing around with some code. Yeah, maybe start playing around with like sketching out some of what the data structs would look like. I think that's what I'll do. So I'll be right back. I'm gonna use the bathroom. My cat wants to lay down with me. My cat wants to lay down. I don't blame him. All right, it is go time. I think so. I started organizing some stuff already, but I have not been a huge fan of how it was organized. So I might start from scratch to kind of get my head figured out. I do want to keep so I do have this timing stuff in place that I definitely want to keep. Um screw it. We're using Git, right? So if I nuke everything, it's fine. So let's create a new branch. What do I call it? Uh Data oriented design, data driven development, the triple D's, DDD. We'll call it DDD. Okay, so let's go ahead and start nuking some of this. Some of this can eventually become config. Import Briarthorn, Raylib, Chrono, CMath, CStandardlib, print. I'm not okay, so let's get rid of we're nuking everything. Everything except for this, that. Okay, I said we're nuking everything and now I'm not nuking anything. Input handling, we're nuking. Nuke. Keep the timing. Keep the interpolation. Nuke the rendering. Nuke the rendering. Minimum 5 years. Stupid question. How much time will it take for a single person to build a game such as Grand Theft Auto 5? A single person? A single person. Okay, so how dedicated is a single person? Because let's think about this. We're talking assets from scratch, right? Do we assume this person is using a game engine, or are they building completely from scratch? So, are you guys aware? You're aware of Stardew Valley, right? Even if you have AI, I think some too much credit is given to AI's capability sometimes, especially for like complex systems. Simple web apps, things like that. Oh yeah, AI is going to knock that out of the park really quick. But anything optimal. But think about this: Stardew Valley, right? Everyone knows Stardew Valley, right? Didn't the developer of Stardew Valley write everything from scratch using what was it, C#, XNA, or something like that? Assets from scratch, their own game. Like XNA isn't even a game engine, I don't think. It's just a framework. I could be wrong about that. As I understand it, the guy who developed Stardew Valley worked on it for 7 years. Like every single day of the week. I think there's a YouTube video with him being interviewed about it. 7 years with no idea if Stardew Valley was going to be a success or not. Spending most of their time developing. A game like Grand Theft Auto, I would say impossible. I wouldn't even say minimum 5 years. I would say impossible. Just straight up impossible. And the more I'm thinking about it, the more impossible it seems. Because, like, the sheer length of time it would take you to make that game, hardware would change on you. I mean, heck, we've gone from OpenGL to, like, Vulkan at this point. So, like, by the time a solo developer gets done building their game, hardware would have evolved so much that maybe the APIs and hardware they built the game for have long since gone. That's why, like, as a solo developer, I don't even know if I should be giving any kind of guidance on game dev because I have never made a game. I have never made a game, which is why you're seeing me like try all different things because I'm just trying to figure out what would work for me to keep me motivated to make the game because I have an idea. That idea being this, but much cooler, I hope. But even something like that's probably going to take me a year or two because I work I work full time, so I don't know. That's tough. That's tough. Um. Anyway, I'm in the middle of nuking, so we nuke. We get our interpolation state set up. So I also wanted to play with input configuration, save settings. Will this even compile? Will it yell at me? Fixed viewport midpoint divisor, I don't need anymore. Zoom step, I don't need. I do want to keep this. I kind of want to just nuke all of this. I don't think I need to nuke this. Maybe I do. I don't know if that makes sense. I'm gonna nuke it all. It's not a lot of code. It's only like a couple hundred lines of code, even if that. I'm gonna nuke this. Do I need this? Vector 2 in color. I might keep this. Yeah, I'll keep this. I honestly don't even know if I need. I don't know if I want to lose this either right now. Enum cast or error. I just won't include it. Heading, math. What am I doing in math? Degrees to radians, radians to degrees. I don't think I need this because I think Raylive gives the conversion. Yeah. So I don't need this anymore. I want to keep heading. I know I'm going to need that. Constants. I'll hold on to it for now because I think heading needs it. Compile errors. Oh, I got rid of the test folder, I think. That's fair. I did get rid of the test folder. Build testing and not mscripton and not Android. Nah. Okay. I did expect this. Gosh, I don't even know if I need this right now. What is all this? Load Briarthorn. Yeah, I don't really need this either. Briarthorn file I don't need. I don't need any of this. Don't need this. Don't need any of this. This is easy. Programming is easy, guys. This is great. Do I write code every day at my job? Currently, yes. It hasn't always been like that. So I'm working for a company, but the company does like contracting jobs. So we are, 6 months period, 12-month period, however you want to do it. Whatever the client needs. They pay you to work, certain tasks over the course of a certain time period. And for this task, for this client, I am writing C++. I am doing DevOps, so a lot of like CI/CD pipeline type of stuff. A lot of project organization, making sure other developers are able to easily pull down the project and get it up and running and be able to reproduce any errors that occur in the CI/CD pipeline. So I would not say I am strictly writing C++ 8 hours a day, but my head is in C++ 8 hours a day. I also, like I said, I'm doing CI/CD pipelines, so that's a lot of like YAML scripting. I got a couple of virtual machines, Windows, Linux, that I'm working in and out of. Prior to this job, I ran a couple of development teams. So a lot of my time actually was not programming. It was interfacing with clients and requirement translating. So basically running like a weekly meeting or a bi-weekly meeting with the rest of the developer team and working with them to figure out how to break these requirements down into tasks so that we could get it all into issue tracking. One, so that the team can remain productive, and two, so that our client had visibility on progress being made, things like that. So at that job, I was not coding 8 hours a day. It was probably more like quarter of my time was spent coding. Half of my time was spent architecting, designing, running the team, and then another quarter of the time was probably spent interfacing with a client, sitting down, going to client meetings, understanding what problems they were trying to solve, and finding ways to help the rest of my dev team out by translating what those requirements are, that kind of stuff. Hey, Captain, how's it going? So typically, now it obviously depends on where you land with your job and how all that works out. But typically, like the higher up you get, like the more you become an expert in your domain, then the more your company is going to lean on you to take what you understand and make it possible for the rest of the development team to get work done. So at that point, it becomes more about me making it as easy and cheap as possible for a business to produce a product than for myself to write the code, than for me to write the code myself, right? Because I'm only one developer. And so if I can get 4, 8, 12 developers on the same page as me and be able to essentially create a really good productive workflow for developers to write code and get tasks done and present to a client that progress is being made, blah, 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 then I'm doing my job well because I am no longer like a single source of failure. I'm not the one everyone needs to come to get answers because I've trained up the rest of my team to be capable of really doing my job. So that's typically what I do. But right now, specifically, I am head in code. My cat is bugging the heck out of me. Hey, come here. Come on. Come here. You're killing me, dude. Come on. You not want to say hi? Huh? Want to say hi? All right. He does not want to say hi. I think he wants food. But I already fed him, so I don't know what to do about that. You just woke up? Is that because it's time to wake up and you just live in a location that's morning, or are you like waking up in the middle of the day or in the evening? Wait a minute. Shouldn't events work? Windows resizable. Oh, I didn't do. I bet I need to do begin drawing, end drawing, clear, color, something like that. I hope someday the IntelliSense, the language servers of the world get caught up to CPP modules, because this is annoying as hell seeing all these red squigglies when you know the code's correct. I guess I could use Visual Studio, but that's no fun. Okay, that's working. Cool. So I think step one is I want to figure out a clean way to manage loading data, because it would be cool to get a little bit of hot reloading working so that I can keep the game up and just like make changes to Toml, or I integrate Lua. So if you guys were here, was it last Friday? I had my previous intern on the stream and kind of walked him through looking into what it would take to integrate Lua. So Lua, Toml, something like that, something that makes scripting a little easier to get your data, to generate a bunch of data quickly without having to recompile every time. So maybe that's where I start. You just woke up and it's nighttime. Holy crap. Is that because of work or just because you're I don't know what the word is, a degenerate? I used to well, no, I basically, even when I was in school and I had to work, I think my sleep schedule has pretty much always revolved around a job. And it just so happens that my job is like an 8-hour day. Wait, it's not visible on desktop? No one said anything. Wait, what? It should be. I'm there. Wait, am I not there? It says I'm live. Oh no. Wait. No, I'm live. Captain's talking to me from horizontal or from desktop. I don't know, like, so YouTube apparently doesn't make it very easy for viewers to know if like there's a vertical version or a horizontal version, a desktop version. But they exist. So those who are watching vertically, please know that I do have a desktop, a 16:9 live stream going on YouTube. It is there. It exists. Captain can verify for me, assuming he's still there. I think YouTube is about to come out with a combined chat for vertical and horizontal. I had my eyes on a video they made that talked about it. I don't think it's out yet, but I think it's coming soon. But yes, the horizontal, the desktop version should be there. I see it, like I have it. It's right here. Actually, I could probably pull it up on my phone. Is this saying I'm not live? No, I'm live. Okay. Yeah. Uh, that's the desktop version. That's the vertical version. So you can pick and choose which version of the stream you want to watch. And history has shown most people apparently watch the vertical version, but I'm assuming that's because you don't know that the desktop version exists. All right. Load assets, load configuration, load settings, keybinds, etc. Well, I guess in order to do this, I need to actually figure out what my state's going to be. And I already kind of started doing something like this for Awin, but I effectively, oh, excuse me, I need to do like, I need to create events and have a function that does something like this. And I think the best way to handle this is using variants and magic enum, which I've done in the past. You figured it out? Oh, heck yeah. Awesome. And like honestly, if I could find a way, and I haven't found a way to do it to where I could stream vertically and horizontally and have it look nice, but I would love to be able to go like this. Obviously, I have it bound to the right side of my screen, but be able to like go full widescreen and do some coding that way, because it's kind of a pain in the butt for myself because I zoom the text in. Um, so like the horizontal width here isn't a lot for me to be able to read the code, and I prefer to have a little bit more space. But I haven't found a way to like make that work for both horizontal and vertical. But basically, I need a way to collect inputs. Oh, and I'm gonna need a way to determine, like, I'm gonna have to interact with the game based on if a controller is detected or not. Because I might want to render. You think about like tooltips and helpful things where it's like, hey, press A to continue, or press A to interact, or press E, the keyboard button, to interact. I'm going to need a way to toggle between that based on if a joystick is detected or not. But that's neither here nor there. Right now, I just literally need to grab and collect all events that have occurred in Raylib. 10,000 people, maybe more. Silence. Ooh, I already have magic enum. Let's go. It's like I know myself. Um, what do I call this function? The hardest part about programming. What do I call this? Is it collect events? Pull events? Get events? I feel like collect events because they don't currently exist. Whereas get events is you're returning something that already exists. Yeah. Yeah? Yeah? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Um so what kind of events are there in a game? Keyboard, mouse, controller, touch if I was using Android, which I don't know if the game I have in mind could work on Android. It'd probably be too small, too hard to see. I could make it to where on Android you don't need manual steering. We could do like automated waypoints and then you just worry about the strategy of like how to move and who to target. Ooh. Well, regardless. Um I definitely am going to support mouse and keyboard. So that's an easy win. And a joystick, right? Or a gamepad, event, gamepad. So we're going to call this an event and stick it in a variant. And then we will have a function called auto collect events. Oh, I mean, if it's going to write it for me. I mean, this doesn't actually work, but hang on. Hang on, guys. This is a twerp. Say hi. You gonna say hi? Were you gonna tell them what you were doing to me? Hmm? Were you biting my feet? Hmm. Yeah. Were you biting my feet? Yeah. I'll be right back. Come on. Ridiculous. Do I watch Tea Soding? I don't know what that is. Is that a yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know what tea sodding is. Am I even saying that right? Tea sodding? Is that a person or is it a show? Yeah, I'm not sure who that is. All right. So I think what we need to actually do here, and I did this before with Awin, is basically we would have keys. I only support I mean, I could only support keys that I actually need to support for my game. I don't have to implement everything, technically. I will have to look them up. I apologize. I'm still getting my footing in the streamer space, so there's not a whole bunch of programmers I watch, like individual YouTubers. I do watch Lori Wired. She's really cool. Um, I am aware of who like Primogen is. I'm trying to think who else. Like a lot of the videos I've watched over the years has been no, that's not what I want. It's been more just random videos versus like trying to find a specific person. CPP con videos, that kind of thing. There we go. Okay. I'm also going to need to define. It's freaking. I don't have Clang D installed, do I? Oh, is that my issue? I don't know why that's not working. A C++ project as a junior, would I have to build? Yeah. Um, I'll That's a tough question to answer. For me, you don't need to necessarily have a C++ project under your belt, but it would help. The difference is, for me and where I'm at, the the market is a lot smaller. I don't know if that's the right word. So like there's not a lot of competition, I guess, if you will. A lot of people are who have to like deal with the leak code style of questioning and need to have like all these projects implemented and have all this proof that you're like the top of the top programmer. Um that typically comes from companies that are fielding hundreds, if not thousands, of applications. My company right now wouldn't is not currently hiring for one, but even if we are, I'm dealing with maybe 10 or 20 applications at a time whenever we're hiring. And so I don't need the superstar programmer. I need someone who can prove that they are capable of, well, one, that you know C++, and two, you are capable of working on your own. You are capable of, when you get stuck, researching and coming to me with attempts and thoughts, not how do you do this, right? Because I'm busy. I've got my own work I'm trying to get done, so I can't sit there and do the work for someone else as a junior. So as a junior, I don't you don't need a project, but it doesn't hurt, right? Maybe it could hurt depending on how badly you write your project, but honestly, for me, just the fact that you've attempted to do a project that you've like, especially if you can complete one, it doesn't even have to be super big, but if you actually like find a problem that needs solved, or even if you just want to make a game, but if I can like walk through the code with you and maybe ask like what would you do different the next, now that you know more, what would you do different, that kind of thing, see if you've learned anything, that goes a long way, especially as a junior developer. But for me and where I live, usually I'm fielding students coming straight out of college who don't have a lot of real world experience, might not even know, like, might not even be able to name an open source project off the top of their head, right? It all depends on the area you're in and who you're talking to, what companies you're applying for. Unknown press release held. Like this would be a good one right here. This would actually be a decent interview question, I think, to see if like a junior developer understands what I'm doing and why. Why would I set my enumerations to all of Raylib's macroed? Um, Actually, are they even macroed or are they just constants? I don't even know. It's Raylib's enums, so they're basically constants. So why would I set my enums to Raylib's enums versus just saying like, oh, Raylib's key 5 is actually a 5? Like, why would I do that? Why would I choose to do that? You know, if someone could if a junior developer could tell me like a benefit of doing that, or maybe talk to the pros and cons of doing something like this, that would be pretty cool. I need to pull up another project here. Let's pull up Awin, because I've already done this event handling in Awin, and there's a macro I need to define for magic enum. It's this. So then, to determine if a key is pressed or released, what I can do is loop over all of the potential key. If the key is pressed, if the key is released. Is there an is key repeated? Is key pressed repeat? Is that a real thing? Or am I making that up? Is key pressed repeat? Check if a key has been pressed again. Wait, versus held down? I'm going to assume that's held down. We'll see if that's true. So this gives us a held, a released, a pressed. So that will create an event list for keyboard. So that's done. So I don't need... Now I need to do mouse. Oh, I think Clang D might be getting in the way of my IntelliSense. It's actually kind of annoying. Really? Do I think Rust is going to replace C++? I don't know. It's going to be a long time. I know Rust is very, 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 very popular to talk about online. But there is a significant difference between what you see online and what's happening in the real world. And C++ is still significantly more popular than Rust. But Rust has a foothold, I think. So I think there is an opportunity. I think professionally, I know of at least like I have now come in contact with Rust. And I have come across some libraries that are pretty awesome in Rust that I have used with a C++ project. Um, I think with C++, because I mean it's C, right? C isn't going anywhere anytime soon. C++ isn't going anywhere anytime soon. Um, I don't I can't predict the future, but at least right now, like C++ is here to stay. I mean, it's still evolving, it's still adapting. We're getting new language features, we're getting new language standards. Just because you hear all the complaints about C++ doesn't mean that there aren't people who isn't writing C++ in a better manner. Because a lot of the complaints of C++, you're comes from some ignorance because someone has used C++ a long time ago and has dealt with the pain of using older versions of C++. Now, I won't deny C++ because of how big it is and how like you said bloated, it is a lot harder to learn for sure. It takes a long time to get a full mastery and understanding of all of like the implicit nature of some of the things C++ does for you that you might not pick up right away just by looking at the code. So I won't deny like there's definitely some issues with it, but I don't know about it ever getting replaced. At least not anytime soon. Like you could still have a full like 30-year career of C++, probably. But if Rust keeps growing and becomes more popular, if it starts actively being used, I mean, at least what I've seen in the social media side of things, the fact that Rust is starting to appear in the Linux kernel, I think that's pretty big. So that makes me think that Rust is here to stay as well. But it's hard. I can't predict the future. But C++ isn't going anywhere anytime soon. Dang it, man. The downside to using modules is your LSPs are not always going to play nice. I had this working at one point, and I have no idea what went wrong. I'm gonna update my VS Code. That's what I'm gonna do. I realize you guys aren't seeing anything right now. Hang on. See, I'm updating VS Code. I promise. Wait for it. I do want to try Rust at some point, obviously because everyone's talking about it online. I have my own complaints about C++, and I've been using it for 15 years. And I'd be curious to see if Rust resolves my complaints. My complaints aren't with memory safety or anything like that, because I have never had any issues writing safe code. Never. But I also got started with modern C++. And so, like, those problems have basically been solved. And then using tools like Clang Tidy kind of helps you with that as well. All right, what updates did we get? Is it more AI nonsense? Add screenshot to chat action in the integrated browser to capture and attach a screenshot of the current page to a chat message. Okay. Hover tooltips and agents, I don't care. Bring your own key, don't care. Search only in changed files toggle. Ooh. Language models, don't care. Terminal commands running in chat show ASCII loading animations. Cool. Okay. I don't think any of that really affects me. Wait, why is it setting up my dev container? What? Dude, I just want my LSP to work. Is that so hard to... Wait, why is it running my dev container? What? Why is it running my dev container? Running host. What in tarnations is going on? Reopening container. Changes in save files just get... Yeah, I think... I'm not sure. I don't think I've ever used whatever the search function it's talking about. Because it's talking about like the ability to search in only changed files, which it's not something I've ever really used. All right, I don't want to build my container right now. That's not what I'm trying to do. Close. That's weird. I don't know what that was about. Oh, great. Now it's not even... Okay. Jeez. Is it so hard to get a go-to definition for this function? Stupid. Get mouse delta. I'm pretty sure that's a vector 2. Get mouse delta. It is a vector 2, which I think is a float. If mouse delta is not 0. Again, doing 0 comparisons against floats is probably not great. Get mouse wheel move. Wait, is my formatter not working now? Format. Configure. Playing format. There we go. All right, something else is going wrong. Oh, whoops. Yeah, that's wrong. There we go. Okay, so only if there is a delta do we say it's been moved. So the mouse, event mouse, we want a vector to position. This isn't even correct. Yeah, that's not even correct. Event mouse, mouse delta. Oh, this is only a delta, so if it's changed, we still need the position. This is wrong. We need to do dot position equals get mouse position. Dot type dot button. And we need to do the same thing here. Position, no. I think that's what I need. Why is it doing that? Error count exceeds 100. Uh-oh. That'll do it. There we go. Now we're getting somewhere. Okay, so we have wheel move, mouse delta. If that determines if the mouse moves, get mouse wheel move. We're gonna need to store that as well. Is there a wheel position? Get mouse wheel move value. Get the wheel movement for X and Y. Get mouse wheel movement for X or Y, whichever is larger. That's probably good enough for now. Get mouse wheel move. Events. Position, float. Let's do wheel. Mouse delta dot wheel equals get mouse wheel move. So I guess I need that for all of these. Except I think this needs to be a that. Mouse wheel move. Mouse delta. Oh, I got that wrong. Cool. Okay. Let's verify my events are working for keyboard and mouse by drawing some text, kind of like I did with Alwyn. We'll do, I guess black's fine. And then we will, we need to include this. That's not right. There we go. That's what I want. Something like this. Oh god. It's only printing it if the events occur. That's not what I want. Oh, that is terrible. That is not working. I don't know if anyone you guys can't really see that, can you? Let's move this over 100 and down 100. The key events aren't even registering. Um, Begin drawing, clear background, begin drawing, collect events. It's almost like the keyboard events aren't even getting picked up. Is key pressed? Oh, wait. This doesn't look... We got to fix this as well. This should be dot type equals key equals... Probably not the issue, though. Oh, crap. It's hard to get events if you pause the application. Okay, so events are happening. I think I think I know what's going on. It's just not it's refreshing what's being drawn faster than I can press the events, would be my guess. So I need to move this outside the loop so that it prints whatever happened last. I think is what needs to happen. Could be wrong, but I think. And sometimes when I think, I could be right. Look at that. Now we're talking. That looks clean. That looks like it's working. We got key presses, space, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, F1. Let's make that a little bigger. It should be a 1280 by 720 window. It's pretty darn close. Almost. Could almost get there. 0, 0, AB. Space, all that's working. Backspace, delete, home, end. Arrow keys, left, up, down, right. All that looks good. We also need... we also need mouse. Type. There we go. So position moved. That should be a button press and release. All right, I'm pretty happy with that. We have events working. So I don't really need this. Cool. I'm gonna need like a I'm gonna have to build up like a debug screen or something to have all of this. That'd be kind of a good way to make sure my thought process works with all of this is like collect the events, translate it into actions, and action being turn on the debug screen, which is like what? Tilde or a grave, as it's called? A grave action. So we can collect events, and events won't get modified, so we could probably make that const. So then the next step would be to implement like an action system. So the actions is where I'm going to need to come up with some state to serialize so that we can define some actions and config at load time. And then I can load those actions, those settings. So do actions belong under settings? The action definitions belong under settings. Do I need actions directly, or do they just do these input events get translated into commands? That is the question. Hey Lillian, how's it going? Don't mind me. I'm just struggling with figuring out how to make a game. How I want to make a game, I should say. Because I still want some nice code to work with. I would go insane if I just started throwing spaghetti code at the wall. So we collect the events. Actions is really just bindings, mappings. Maybe that just falls under settings. So I can still, I still need to translate the events to actions so that I can then translate the actions to commands. That way, if we invoke any kind of action, it will invoke a command, such as jump. And then the command will define what jump means. Is that how I want to do that? I think that's how I want to do that. So this almost becomes... Do we need to pass settings into here? Because settings would contain the action mappings. Settings.action map, maybe? Because what would that look like? This would be like your jump action is bound to key space or gamepad button A, etc. So then how do you know what action occurred? You know by reading the events and passing it into like the action calculator, if you will. Because from a load configuration perspective, I'm probably going to need a command to be produced from an action, which is almost like a factory. And how do we know to create this command jump? Because we processed the events, compared it to the map, and determined that jump occurred. More and more, this is making me think I should make this a polymorphic solution. I mean, still, at the end of the day, I could still use variants. That's basically what I'm using for these events. So what does my action map look like? Because I have to read these events. It's going to build a list of actions, which is just a list of strings. Is that all this is a list of strings? And then I pass those strings into process commands, and then those strings convert commands. So I'm going to have to do like a factory registration of all the different actions my game will support. That could work. I think that could work pretty well, actually. So this will take the action map and the events and determine what actions actually occurred. Turn that into a list of strings. Process the list of strings, which will create these commands, which then get executed, which gets processed to modify game state. I kind of like this. Should be pretty easy to follow, too. I'm going to change the name of this, though. Collect input events, I think, is what I'll call that. Cool. Okay. So then that action map would get defined via a toml configuration file loaded, and then a user modifying their settings, I would automatically save to the toml. That way, if the user wanted to, they could just go in and modify the file itself. That's not a big deal. And it doesn't need to be particularly fast to load. It doesn't need to be binary. I think that could work. And this would be a good proof of concept to get my serialization up and running too, while keeping everything simple. So if that's the case, then I need to translate events. But before I can translate events, I'm going to need an action map and a small factory pattern for creating commands, generic commands. I'm going to need an action map. A user configurable action map. So this isn't going to work. I need to include a map. I'm going to need the, am I going to need the events? I'm going to need the events, I think. No, no. The autocomplete's getting it all wrong. The action is going to be like a a name, I guess. The action name, and then the trigger condition. So, which means determining if an action is triggered on like key up, key down, gamepad, etc. The action probably has a strength to it. So if you're like using an axis, it's 0 to 1, but a key press is just 0 or 1. So events that trigger the action. So I can store like a, I don't know, the K button, for instance. Mouse button, joystick. An action map would be the action name, the action, because if I'm going to serialize this, the translate would take the event, loop over the triggers, and then if one of these events exists on this trigger, then this action occurred, which would return a vector of strings. I guess, I mean, I could technically return the vector of actions themselves. And then you would just get the name off of that. I don't know if that does anything. Doesn't really hurt anything other than moving a little bit more memory around. During translation, I have a list of events and my collection of actions. I'm not going to be I'm not performing an O of 1 lookup on these actions, so I don't think an action map actually makes sense here. I think it's a vector of actions. It's just literally a predefined list of actions that the game supports. I would essentially hard code it on startup, and then the menu, the settings menu would render it, and you would see it. You would see what's available. So I would just, prior to the game loop, just manually define what the actions are, or define it in a config file. So I think this is it. So I think this is a list of actions that occurred. What? What do you want? Hmm? What do you want? So let's see if the autocomplete's doing what I want. I'm not too worried about an n squared or an m times n algorithm complexity because we're talking a handful of actions. If the event exists in the action. If a trigger can be found, I gotta be careful here. I don't know if this will work unless I overload the definition of the comparison operator to not include like wheel up or wheel down. Well, no, I might actually want to do wheel up or wheel down. But mouse position wouldn't work. The other thing I could do is just have a completely custom. I don't know. I basically just want to compare the types. The types and the buttons. The types and the buttons. I could move these. I can move the types and buttons out of the events themselves. I don't like that. When am I pushing this code? Do you mean just the code I'm currently working on? This code won't be open source. Since this is for my game. My game engine, Awin, that's open source. That exists in GitHub. But this code won't necessarily be public. Built-in operator not equal can't be applied. Okay, so I guess it can't do this comparison. I was kind of hoping it could. Are we not able to do variant comparisons? If not, that's fine. But this code's about to get a lot uglier, and now people are going to have ammo as to why C++ sucks. Can variants be compared? Yes, variant objects can be easily compared in C++. The standard library provides built-in support for all standard relational equality. Maybe I need to define spaceship operators. Built-in operator not equal cannot be applied to an operand of type event. Wonder if I need spaceship operators. Autocomplete, do it. Yeah, there you go. You knew what I wanted. Do it again. And again. Ooh. Okay. Does that not work? Nope, that's not what I wanted. What am I doing? What am I doing? What am I doing? Variant comparison not equal cannot be applied. When you encounter an error stating that an inequality not equal comparison cannot be applied to a variant, it typically means you are comparing two variables or objects where the programming language or data pipeline does not natively support. It's not allowed because the compiler doesn't implicitly know which alternative type you are targeting. Use holds alternative to ensure the variant holds the type you expect. Okay, I thought I could get away with this, but apparently not. That's fair and reasonable. Honestly, probably works out because I can do some more explicit comparisons to get the triggers I actually need. Or not? In that same link, I believe it says the int would be implicitly cast to satisfy the comparison function signature for an int. That's probably trivial, but for a string, that could mean a copy. A variant may have multiple duplicates of the same type. A given instance of variant compares equal to another if and only if they hold the same variant alternative and said alternative's values compare equal. Right, so then why is this not compiling? It is an arbitrary decision by the standards committee. Okay, not quite arbitrary. The point is you have a scale of strictness of comparison. You know what? That's fair. Either way, I should probably do this explicitly anyway, because I don't want this to do comparisons on floating point data. That's just a recipe for disaster. So what I need then is I don't think I need the floats. Okay. So I probably just need to write another auto compare. Ooh. Compare events. Const event and left. Const event right. And do a visit. What is this doing? No, that's not. No. Oh, God. That's not quite right. I don't think I want to use it this way. I need the overloaded implementation I have in Awin. Where did I put that? I need that. I don't think I knew. Does this actually work? Does visit let you visit two of the same type or multiple types? If that's true, that's awesome. I don't think I knew that. Or autocomplete's just doing its funky thing. Okay, so what I need to do here is nothing for auto. But then explicitly, I need const event keyboard L and R, and do the same thing for event mouse. Except event mouse, I need it to be, let's see, the keyboard is the type, the button on press on release. For a game, is it usually, well, you want movement to be on press, don't you? Because you want to be able to hold down. So this might be subject to change. That doesn't matter because I can just define it when I go to define my actions. So keyboard, mouse, anything else, return false. Let's see what happens here. Ew. Ugh. Of course evaluated to false. The concept evaluated to false. Oh, unary invocable. So that's... only. So in the list of events... Really? We're still getting this issue? Standard visit, no matching overloaded function found. Yeah, I don't know. Can you visit to... Oh, do I have to account for every combination? That shouldn't matter because I should account for it via the autos. I've never done this before, so I'm curious if this is possible. Because I want to compare event keyboard with event keyboard. So if it's not a keyboard, we return false. And if it's not found, then we just continue in the loop and see if it compares with anything else. So this is how I want it to work. So what is it saying? Standard visit, no matching overloaded function found. Could not deduce template argument for the return. Uh, uh... I don't need to do this, do I? Could not deduce template for argument name symbol. Oh, wait, is it yellow? Okay, hang on. Let's try. Let's just make sure the compare events works. Because I think the issue might be that I'm passing in, well, let's just see if this works. Let's do if compare events trigger events dot front. Just see if that compiles. Standard visit, no matching overloaded function found for callable. Could not deduce template argument. Do I really need to account for the other combinations? All right, this is an LLM question. Let's see if it knows what's going on here. I am trying to visit only specific combinations. Oh, I never used overloaded. Wait a minute. We need to be using overloaded here. Hang on. Gosh darn it. Overloaded. I think it's BT overloaded. Is that the issue? Come on, guys. Why didn't you say something? Jeez. You had to use overloaded, of course. All right, let's see if this works now. See, isn't C++ easy? Crap. We're still having issues with this call, though. Standard range is fine, so we pass in events, which should go into... oh, wait. Is this a find if? Am I just being dumb? We might still need a spaceship operator. All right, I'm tired of fighting with this. I'm ready to be done for the evening. I've already programmed enough. Fix me. Could just be using this wrong. Really? Oh. For some reason I thought find if would accept a comparison of... I guess that makes sense now that I think about it. Okay. All right, so that works. So if then close to the right, I come into main here, and let's assume we define some configuration for actions. Standard vector actions. So jump, shoot. Jump being a space bar when pressed. Shoot being a left mouse button when pressed. After we collect our input events, we should have... Is it translate events? Translate events? I don't like that. Let's do events to actions. So let's try that. Ooh, all the compile errors. All of the compile errors. It's probably not liking key. Yeah, this isn't right. This should be event. This should be event keyboard. Cannot convert initial. Oh my god. This should be dot name equals. This should be dot triggers equal. What is this having an issue with? This is dot key type button. Put a comma at the end here to help with the formatting. So we have an action. Does this need to be a vector? Are you kidding me? Cannot convert initializer list to an action. Why not? It should work just fine. Dot name dot triggers. BT action. BT action. Am I importing it? Briarthorn. Actions. Briarthorn actions. Cannot convert initializer list to... All right, C++ is dumb. Don't ever write C++. I'm probably missing... Event mouse, event keyboard. Wait, it's because I had them out of order? Was that the issue? Sometimes I kind of understand the argument against using C++ because it's okay to throw an error for them being out of order. I think that for sure needs to happen. But why didn't they just tell me they were out of order? Like I was initializing this out of order. They could have definitely done that for me. So can I get rid of this then? And just do... That's kind of crazy. Okay. So we collect our events. We translate them into actions. This is like my action map. These are actions. Events. And then down here, actions. We'll see if what is it? Jump and shoot occurs. Okay. So well, I can already tell you that shoot shoot is working. You're just not seeing it. Hang on. I forgot. We need to how do we need to do this? Because this gets cleared out if no action occurs, and since we're rendering at like 15,000 frames a second, we are, of those 15,000 frames, we're only rendering that an action happened for like a couple of frames, so you never see it happen. So we need to remember like our previous action. Standard string. What should I do here? Only a single action occurs at a time, so I guess I'll just only render one action. Action event, none. So then let's just do draw action event. Make this like 180. We don't need this. What we do need is action event equals standard format, and just do, oh, format join. Sure, assuming that works. Passing in actions. Is that a thing? Is it auto completing a format library API on me? It sure is. Does standard format have a join? That would be so cool if it did. Now I'm curious. Yeah, the format library has join, but I don't think format has. Oh my god. I'm not. We don't need it that bad. I'm just going to do. Actually, wait a minute. Can't I literally just do print the actions? Can I just do this? Never easy. Oh, wait a minute. If actions is not empty, do that. Boom. It shot by pressing the left mouse button. Other keyboard events, if I hit space, we got to jump. Shoot, jump, shoot, jump, shoot, jump. We officially have the ability to map events to actions, and then we'll use those actions to create commands to drive state changes to the game. So jumping, firing, well, I'm not jumping in an aircraft. Turning, steering, acceleration, deceleration, any kind of point and click operations, those will create commands as well. Awesome. So the next step will be to create a command API, which I think I can probably get away with using variants as well. Because it would be cool if I could build an entire game without like using the heap to allocate pointers or anything like that. I might still need to take references or perform searches on references, that kind of thing. Not necessarily store them. Because that'd be cool. Because I've never written code like that. And that's how I learn. I try out different programming techniques. And I think I am going to end it there. It's getting late for me. Even though it does look a little day out, that's just the reflection of the light. It's actually starting to get dark. But yeah, so I just wanted to sit here and play around with some C++ and see if I could find ways to write this such that I can do it without a bunch of polymorphism and pointers. I don't know if I'll stick with it. This was just kind of an exploration night. But I do like what I was able to kind of figure out and map out in my head, which is why I sketched out all those comments in the main loop. It always helps when you're designing to kind of get ahead of your API requirements, at least get an idea. Obviously, it's subject to change as you start implementing. But I find it useful. And it also helps me professionally because if I find new ways to solve problems, then maybe I'll eventually come across something like, oh, hey, I know how to solve that, that kind of thing. But yeah, I thank you guys for coming by. Tomorrow, I'm back to Baldur's Gate Enhanced Edition. And then Friday, much more coding. I'm thinking I'll stick to this on Friday and look at getting the command API implemented to start building all that up. And then after that, I think we jump straight into building out. Well, we still need to get the TOML configuration or some kind of serialization going. So I have used TOML. I already have a library implemented to use TOML. We'll see if we can map all of this state data to TOML to register like the event triggers, that kind of thing. And then from there, it might be cool to just get like a simple menuing system up and running to see if we can allow a user to change what their key bindings are. I think that would be really cool. So look forward to that on Friday, 5:30 Eastern Standard. And I'll probably be on there for a while, so that'll be a longer stream. Yeah, until then, I will see you guys later. Have a good night.